last but not least, a good chainsaw. This, of course, a big fallen saw. That weight's back this way, and that hinge is holding it. Hi, and welcome to the Cinnabar. Today we're going to take a break from shooting vintage firearms because, well, work comes before play today. Nights are getting colder. We've even had a couple of early season snows. And most importantly, hunting season's over. So we can fire up the chainsaws now and start thinking about getting our winter supply of firewood in. So today we're going to talk about fallen timber. Now, I spent quite a few years working in the woods, and most of that time I was falling timber. So I'm hoping I can share with you some tips, some real basic pointers on how to fall trees safely. You know, take it seriously, folks. This is a dangerous business, and while we all kind of like to do manly macho things like this, you really need to know what you're doing. And if you're not comfortable with it, don't just try to fake your way through it, because you know it's cost a lot of good men their lives. So take this real seriously, and that starts with our personal protective equipment, and don't skimp here. You know, starts with a good hard hat for obvious reasons. We want eye protection. We want some good earplugs for ear protection. Some good gloves. Saw shaps. Don't skimp on your saw shaps. You know, you can get away with it a whole lot, but if you run a chainsaw long enough, these chaps will save your bacon. Some good work boots. I kind of like having fiberglass toed work boots. I don't really like the steel toed ones, but you need some protection for your toes. When you're running that saw, that particularly limbing and bucking, you can get the saw right next to your feet, and they'll save your toes. Also, if you're doing a lot of cutting, invest in some cork boots. You know, when you're up on top of a tree doing limbing and whatnot, you need some good traction. Okay, some of the other tools that we're going to need, obviously a good fallen saw, as sharp as possible. Some wedges in case we need to wedge that tree over, and even if we don't, just for safety's sake, we want to put a wedge in a back cut, and we'll show you how to do that. And obviously a good axe to pound those wedges in, and of course you can use an axe for several different things. The other thing we need is a plumb, and you can make a plumb out of a chain like I've done here with a little weight on the end of it, or just a piece of string with a weight on it, because we want to size that tree up, and don't just rely on eyeballing a tree. They'll fool you. They'll fool you a lot. Sometimes they're leaning a long ways and it looks like they're straight up and down. It just depends on what the terrain looks at behind them and whatnot. There can be some real optical illusions. So as we size up that tree, we're gonna hold that plumb up there and see just exactly which way that tree leans. This tree I've already sized up. It is just about straight up and down, so we don't have to worry about having a big lean in it. As sizing it up, we can see that there's a couple other trees nearby here down the hill. We want to keep it away from those trees. Because this one is straight up and down, we can pretty much fall it wherever we want to. And if you know what you're doing, even with a tree that's got a big lean in it or a lot of weight on one side or the other, we can directionally fall those if we know what we're doing. But you got to be real careful about that and understand the concepts involved. So we're going to get busy on this tree here. We're going to take this tree up the hill. This is a dead tree, and it's going to be kind of brittle. So the last place we want to do is take it downhill, where it's going to get up a big head of steam, and it's kind of uneven that way. It's kind of even here, so it's going to fall a little lighter and go right uphill, and that keeps it away from these other trees. Now, as we're sizing it up, one of the things we want to look for is any what we call a widowmaker. There's a broken limb that's hanging in there, or that type of thing. Or if it's got tree limbs that are hung up with a nearby tree, that's going to affect a lot how this thing falls. So there's a lot of different things to look at when you're sizing up a tree. One of the things about this tree too is that it's dead, so it's going to be a little more brittle. It's going to break that hinge a little easier than a live tree would, with a lot of moisture still in it. Also, if they're really rotten, and this one isn't, you stand the danger of what we call a fold back, where you know, part way up the tree, once it starts some momentum, that top can fold back and fall back in the direction, opposite direction of where you're falling it. So there's a lot of things to be looking at. Okay, so we'll stick with us. We're going to get this thing faced up, and we'll explain to you what we're doing while we're facing it up, and then we'll put a back cut and put it over. Okay, so we're going to put our face cut in now. Basically, we're going to put a good flat horizontal cut in about 1/3 to 1/2 of the diameter of the tree. Okay, this is going to give us the direction that we're going to follow the tree. Most saws like this still here have a sight line that's molded into the plastic that you can use, and it'll give you a pretty good direction on where that tree is going to fall. It's 90 degrees to the chain. Okay, our second cut, we have a choice. We can make a conventional cut, which comes in from the top and meets, or a Humboldt cut, which most mills want because it makes a square end on the log that comes up from the bottom and meets. Now take your time on this. Okay, we don't need to get in a big hurry. Even professional fallers, not every time do their cuts just match up perfectly and that wedge just falls out. So if it doesn't line up just perfectly the first time, get back in there and clean it up real good, because this is an extremely important cut as far as where that tree is going to go. Okay. Okay, as you can see, I was just a little bit high on that cut. It didn't quite come together, so we just dropped that saw a little bit and cleaned that up. Just takes a second to get that done. Okay, it's time to put our back cut in. But before we do, we really need to be thinking about safety now, because this is the point at which this tree is going to go over, and it's the most dangerous point in the cutting down of a tree. So what we really need to focus in on is where we're going to go once this tree starts to tip over. Now, obviously, we don't want to go anywhere in the direction of where the tree's fallen. The next most dangerous place is directly behind the tree. I talked a little bit about foldovers earlier, where the top can come out and come backwards on you, or if you've got limbs that are hanging up, they'll throw back that way. So we don't want to go directly away from the tree. So the safest angle to get away from is about a 45-degree angle out that way. It gets us as far away from the tree as possible, but not being right in the opposite direction where stuff's going to get thrown at us. Okay, here we're on the edge of the high desert. There's not much brush or things in the way. If there's obstructions on your path out of there, get them cleaned out. Take the time. If you need to cut some brush out of the way or some down trees or whatever it is, get those out of there. Okay. Now, when we put the back cut in, we want to put that back cut in just a little bit higher than the face cut. Okay. One of the things it does is it makes it a little easier to get that wedge in there. The tree doesn't tend to sit back on us if that cut's a little bit high. It also gives us a little notch here. If that tree's wanting to slide back on the stump, it's got a little place that's going to hold it and keep it from doing that. Okay. What we really want to make sure we don't do is when we get this cut going, that we cut part of the hinge off. And the place that we tend to do that more than anything is right here on this corner. And if we cut that off, then that tree gets released from that side, and it's going to come right back towards us where we're cutting. So we want to really make that hinge uniform all the way across. And we'll look at that after we get this tree off of the stump, and we'll kind of explain the hinge and how it works and what it's supposed to look like. And hopefully I'll make one that looks really good. Okay, as soon as we get this bar in far enough, we're going to put a wedge in behind it into that back cut. It's way easier to put the wedge in before the tree starts to lean, typically, or especially if it wants to lean back. If that wedge is already there, then you can drive it. If it isn't, and you got to drive a wedge into that saw curve after it's closed, that's a real chore. Okay, so let's take a look at our stump here, and this one's pretty textbook. You can see a good deep face here, just a little less than halfway into the diameter of the tree. We want to keep a deep face, a good deep angle. If we have a real shallow angle, then that face closes and it breaks that hinge, and that hinge is what controls that tree going in the direction we want. If it breaks really early, then that tree's in free fall, and if we got a lot of weight one way or the other, it can pull that tree one way or the other. Okay, so our back cut is just maybe an inch or two higher than the face cut, which keeps it from sliding back off and keeps the weight going in the direction we want it to go. You see, we're good and even across the hinge. If we have it way wider on one side or the other, it'll pull to where there's more wood. So if there's more wood on this side, say, it'll pull that tree in that direction, and that we don't want. And of course, if, as I talked earlier, if we nip one side or the other off, then that lets that tree fall in the opposite direction of where you nip that off, because now we're not holding on that side, and that's a real dangerous thing to do. So if you notice, I was checking a lot where both sides of my chain were, so to make sure that we got an even hinge all the way across. And then of course we had to do a little wedging to get it over, so that worked out really well. You got to see some wedging. We put in one wedge, got it almost to the hilt, and it still hadn't gone, so we had to stack a couple of wedges on top of each other and make those work. So this was a good tree to film for you, to show a lot of different things. So now we need to get some of these limbs off and get it down to the landing where we can make some firewood. Now this one's going to keep my shop warm a whole lot this winter. There's a lot of wood in this old girl. Until next time, happy trails from the Cinnabar.